All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. If you look in the chat, you'll see that Kay has uh, provided a link to the festival program. So please take a moment to look at that if you haven't already gotten it. And Mark, if you're there, I think we're ready to get started with concert 4 uh, at your pleasure.
Noise triumphs and reigns supreme over the sensibilities of men.
I have not existed.
Today.
Today, noise drives and reigns supreme over the sensibilities of man.
right. Hey, how about a hand for all of the composers and videographers for that really wonderful, great job. I remember seeing all of those on New Music Engine and just being blown away by them. We've got a few minutes here to have a little bit of conversation and some questions. If you have a question, I just invite you to jump right in. If you want to put it in chat, that's great too. Or you can use the raise hand function, which is in the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if there's any questions. I'd like to talk to Matt about shift smear. Matt, it's nice to meet you, and thanks for sharing your work with us today. I know this is kind of a question I've been wanting to ask, I think, everybody a little bit, which is, your piece is originally for multi-channel quadraphonic sound. So as a composer, what's this experience been like to see it now sort of reduced to this delivery format, not maybe being able to control how other people are engaging with your music? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, majority of my pieces, I actually have it in quadraphonic, then I do it in stereo just for online. But shift.smear, I put it in stereo so I could put it for art competitions. So there's this Southeastern based art competition in South Carolina that I submitted it, and I just had basically a large TV with, I think, 4 individual headphones set up. So you just sit down, plop the headphones, stay there for the full thing or longer, or just plop them in, not my thing, and leave. And it actually won the best digital media award there. So I've actually experienced this piece in stereo quite a bit.
I just think that I thought that the video component, personally, I just was blown away by it. I thought it was really engaging. And I wanted to chat with you a little bit about, I'm just going to apologize ahead of time. I don't do a lot of video, but I'm curious about your techniques with data moshing and pixel sorting. And I'm just kind of wondering if you approach that, for example, data moshing, are you using are you manually doing that with a hex editor, or are you using some other software that you use for that manipulation?
Yeah, so I'll start with the data moshing part, or the smear part, the second half of the thing. There's this technique where you first convert it. It's manually, but it's not so much in the code. I am breaking videos so it can do that glitch, like a bad digital cable or satellite image or bad internet image. The first thing you do is you take the video, you put it into 2 different antiquated software. One is FFmpeg X, I think it's called, or FFmpeg, and you convert it to an MPEG codec. Then you do some other stuff inside it. Then you bring that over to this nonlinear editor called AVI Demux. And so data moshing, you have iframes, B frames, which we don't really worry about, and P frames. So in data moshing, you can take a video's iframe out, then you have all the P frames, then you join another video at the end of it, take its iframe out, and then you're just left with P frames. P frames are basically showing you where the pixels are moving. An iframe is the image frame, which is the start of the next video. So if you take that iframe out, then you have the pixels of the next video pushing the pixels from the last video, because it's not telling you to stop. So in AVI Demux, I take all the iframes out of the videos and then combine them. But for this piece, it likes to crash a lot, because again, it's a very old software. So I only work with 2 videos at a time. And so with the first 2, I'll have the first one, add the second video, take the iframe out, and then it's data mosh. Export that, import those 2 videos back in as the one video, and just keep stacking videos on top.
Really effective, really effective. And what an interesting, wonderful process to go through to create that. Thanks again for sharing it with us, and congratulations.
Thanks for having me.
Joao, I want to talk a little bit about Tesseract. I love this work. I loved it when I first saw it on New Music Engine. Just such an engaging work that invites, I think, the viewer and the listener in. The transparency of the audio and its connection to the video, to me anyway, is really stunning and a little intimidating because it's just done so well. Can you talk a little bit about the process behind the video in particular? For example, is all of the imagery computer generated, and sort of what your approach was in creating this work?
Hey, hi everybody. Nice to see you all, first of all, and thanks also for the invitation, for being at the festival. I'm very happy. Yeah, regarding your question, so the process is usually a process which is done in several stages. So the first one is to generate the basic material, and it's all computer generated. There are no recorded images. So the first thing you do is basically generate with several programs the basic material, and then from there on you go into a kind of a montage of the material. So how is it going to connect all the different generated sequences that you have? How are they going to connect? And then you go back to the computing, the synthesis, the visual synthesis, to complete gaps or say places where the montage is not adjusting. So it's a kind of a construction process, bottom up. Sometimes the music is done at the same time. Sometimes the music is done afterwards. But in all cases, it's the interest is that the music somehow connects in an organic way to the image, so that it sounds like it's natural to that type of image. Sometimes it works better, sometimes it works less better, but still that is the main idea. Then finally, when everything is kind of finished and everything montaged, then you add up the gloss, if you want to call it, so the little effects, little color changes, light differences, etc.
I was struck by the number of comments that was happening in the chat during your piece, and a lot of them, I think Doug, who in my Brady Bunch Zoom meeting is Marcia, is mentioned about the form and the structure of it, always coming back to that cube, and one of the things that it seemed that it really had a really solid functional form throughout the piece.
Yeah, well, yeah. So the tesseract is a hypercube. So it's a cube. Or actually, it's the projection in 3 dimensions of a cube with 4 dimensions. So the idea was to transform this cube, but go back to each one of the faces of the cube. So if you look throughout the video, the cube comes back, but it comes back in a different position. So the idea was to try at some moment to kind of twist the cube into presenting the 6 different faces.
Well, Joao, I think it was just incredibly effective, and thank you for sharing your work today with us.
Very well.
Rodrigo, welcome, and it's good to see you again. I don't know how long it's been, but so happy that you were also able to join us today. I think I see you're there. Yeah. In your notes, you mentioned coming to terms with or accepting noise in our world. I think the term you use is you say you make peace with it. Can you chat a little bit more about this in relationship to the work that you provided?
Yes, thanks. It's been great to be here. Very nice to see you again, Mike. I think it's like 9 years or something like that.
Probably, at least.
Yeah, something about that. And thanks for inviting me. And it's great to be here. And I've been enjoying the whole morning. Well, this is an old piece that Kay chose, and that I'm very happy about it because it doesn't go in concerts very often. It's the first time I've done it online since the pandemic, and it's a piece, as you were saying, that I did as a commission for a Luigi Russolo homage or activity a few years ago, many years ago, where I chose some of his texts and the text about noise and how can we incorporate that into our art, and decided to use them as a way of myself at the moment coming to terms or being in peace with the place where I was living at the time. It was so noisy that I was not able to compose at all. So that was more or less the story. So I chose to get into some of his texts, perform them with the computer as with a reading device, which is now very common, but at the time there was no iPhone or anything like that. So I worked quite a lot to be able to have the computer reading the text and then using that as the sound sources. So that's more or less the process.
Yeah, as a composer, noise is, it's what we define as noise. I mean, many of us have been to, artist colonies. They're out in the middle of the woods, and I don't know about you. Sometimes there's too much beautiful noise that is also distracting for composing as well. So
no, you're right. And here, just a brief comment. Here at the Mexican Center for Music and Sonic Arts, where in Morelia, where we have the studios, tons of the composers that come here and do residencies, they enjoy opening the windows and using the noise from the city as the sources for their work. And I just can't believe it. We even have a list of the most, I mean, whatever the sounds that everyone uses, like the bell that the garbage people takes, the train, everything that we at least myself hate a lot. Other composers really enjoy them as sound sources, and that I feel that's very interesting. We always keep track of that at the center, so you're right.
Yeah, and your program notes are perfect, right? Making peace with that noise, embracing it and accepting that's the soundscape. That's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your work today. And I want to talk a little bit about Doug and Allison's piece. First off, nice to meet you, Allison. Wonderful work, guys. I got to tell you, when I saw this on New Music Engine, I got to tell you, when I saw the title, I didn't really, it sort of set up an expectation. Yeah. And what I was struck by was actually the level of optimism in your work, because it wasn't what I was expecting. To be frank, I was expecting mean corporate world destroying the earth. And there's certainly some of that in there for sure. But there's also a real, I think, as you say in your notes, celebration and an optimism of what we maybe have done, but what we can be. And I really appreciated that a great deal in your piece. I was hoping maybe you guys could talk a little bit about your collaboration and working together to put this together, and perhaps also working with the Unheard Of Ensemble and how that performance went and how it sort of then created what we saw today.
Well, first of all, I did just want to say I didn't think I would wake up this morning and be compared to Marsha Brady. So that was I think that's high praise, isn't it? I think that's a high compliment.
Marsha.
Yeah. It's all about her. Well, I think Allison, I think I was working on the music, and I had been working on the music, and then there was a call for works from the Unheard Of Ensemble for multimedia works. And at that point, I was like, Allison, we got to do this. We got to apply for this. Allison had done some work for she does everything. She can tell you all about it, but a lot of work in Glitch, and then also doing a lot with even just album covers for previous releases. So I loved her style, loved her aesthetic and her work ethic. And so I was like, we've got to do this project together. And so I think I worked on the music, and then I kind of just gave it to Allison, and I had all these like angsty comments about corporate responsibility pledge, and I kind of just threw it all on her plate. And I was like, I think this might be cool. I think this might be cool. And then that's where then she sort of kind of, that's where the collaboration began. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I think some of the optimism just comes from, I just really enjoy working with Doug. So I think I was just in a good mood
Yeah. So we could write about the end of the world, but it like be fun because it's fun to collaborate. Yeah.
And I think also just like there's, we didn't want to be like too heavy-handed about it.
Absolutely.
And so much of the material that I was starting with was this like industrial, like mid-century material. And at the time, they were being genuine about like, oh my God, this is like amazing progress. And like, look at these fabulous, fabrics and techniques, and you can make it to the top. And, I don't think I think it was partly genuine, of course, partly, capitalistically motivated, but there's, I don't think at the time they were as ecologically knowledgeable as we are now. So, the hindsight, I add the glitchiness sort of represents the like, deterioration and decay from our modern standpoint. But I'm so into like the kitsch factor that I really embrace it. And I sort of didn't want to like blame, citizens of that time who were like being catered to. Instead just kind of like embrace it and say like, yeah, we messed up. But at the same time, like I make my footage, like I grab the footage, from the internet and then use my smartphone to manipulate it. So we're not all innocent, it's like we're still part of that continuum. So I couldn't totally relieve myself of responsibility, even if I'm not technically corporate. So yeah, I think it was just kind of this mix of like, and of this, like, it still is a conflict. Like, are we doing enough? Are we contributing? How much are we as individuals responsible? How much are the corporations, at that time, were they aware? How much did they not care? So, yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be also just like, there's so much doom and gloom stuff that we could have gone with, but it's a music video. Like, it's entertainment too. So,
but I think Allison brought that nuance. Like I said, I brought this really kind of angsty, like thing, and she brought this nuance to it. This like, are we complacent in it in some way? So I will say this though, the footage does end with a nuclear wasteland. So I mean, it's like a nuclear dawn. But at that point, you were just kind of like, oh well, it's exciting and upbeat. So but it is. I mean, I don't know how else more tragic we could have ended it.
So that's what it looks like. It's actually just like a beautiful sunset and a mountain that I just like glitched out to make it look like that. And then there's other parts where it's just like clear streams and water that then look like totally polluted. So I mean, but part of it is like, just with some human intervention, we create these ecological disasters. Like we're given these like beautiful earthly treasures and then we just screw it up. So so yeah, I really like that ambiguity in it as well, where it is open to interpretation and the presentation of it is supposed to be, I mean, there is some cynicism to it. So I don't think, even if that's not what, I mean, it kind of even then plays into the whole video itself, is that like what the intention was versus what the actual result is and how we can interpret it in hindsight. So I think having you interpret it that way is like almost more accurate in terms of what it represents versus what it maybe the source material was created as.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly shows sort of the power that we have, humanity has, and but it shows what we can do. I mean, there are good things that we've done that have negative consequences, right?
Yeah.
And so, well, I just thought your piece, as was all of the pieces, very effective. And to everyone, I want to just say thank you once again for sharing your afternoon with us and sharing your work with us. We're going to take a little bit of a break right now. And we're going to resume in about 11 minutes here at the top of the hour. So 5 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Central time. And Kay, what time is it Tucson time?
2 p.m.
There we go. And we'll come back for our concert 5, featuring the great clarinetist Jackie Glazier. So we look forward to seeing you guys in about 11 minutes. Thanks for coming.